Good morning to you. I am Dan Kopp, founder and CEO of Leading Like a Buffalo, joining you live from Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. And joining me, like always, is Ty Firsching. Good morning, Ty.
Good morning, Dan, and good morning, everyone else. My name is Ty Firsching. I'm the CEO of Trade Leadership and am currently in Uganda. So, being halfway across the world and in a area where the internet doesn't always work, power doesn't always work. If I drop off or if there's some distortion and I disappear, Dan's going to continue on, and I hopefully will be able to add myself back on within a short period of time. Other than that, I'm glad to be here. I love the topic today. So, Dan, what's our topic?
Right on. Today, we are going to talk about what great leaders know what to drop or add when they're moving forward. But before we get into today's topic, I want to remind people that if you'd like to work with Ty and or me, you can reach out to us directly on LinkedIn or feel free to email us at our emails that are scrolling on the bottom of the screen. And Dan at leadingbuffalo.com and Ty at tradesecrets.com. And if you want to check out our YouTube channel, we are the Enhanced Leadership Project. You can go over to YouTube and catch all of our previous episodes. If you are watching live, feel free to drop a comment in the section and interject when you want to, and we will do our best to address your comments and or questions. If you're watching the replay, feel free to share and comment and ask questions if you have them. We'll address all future questions in a future episode. So today's topic, great leaders know what to drop or add. This is a huge one when it comes to being a leader because it's easy to inundate your people with add without considering about dropping. So let me take a step back and tell you the inspiration for this video. It's rather comical because a couple months ago, I was trying to get used to my new computer, and I've got a MacBook and I've got an iPhone, and like I sometimes do, I was clicking on different tabs while Ty and I were online together. And instead of going to a new tab and clicking on a new link, I clicked on the one we're on. Next thing you know, because my phone's attached to it, my phone is showing my video feed. I figured it out. A minute later, we're back on, and Ty said, "What was that in the background?" Fortunately, it was nothing more than a pencil sharpener. So he laughed because I have an electric pencil sharpener to my right. So that got us talking about, at what point in time do you get rid of an electric pencil sharpener? Do you even still use an electric pencil sharpener? So, believe it or not, I've got pencils sitting here. I've got some colored pencils. I, on occasion, do use them. So it is not an antiquated piece of equipment, but it would be odd to find a pencil sharpener in most places of business because they are a bit antiquated. So that was the inspiration for today's episode. I want to start with what to give up, what to add, the concept of adding. When you add as a leader, it is easy to forget about all the other things that you've added in the past. So when you add, we encourage you to also talk about or consider what you can remove off of the plate of your people. So if you're adding something, ideally you're deleting something. If that's not possible, sometimes it's just a manner in which you are accomplishing a task within the company or organization. So you have to frame it as such. Hey, we're doing it this way as opposed to the old way. It's not adding anything. We're just doing it differently. But it's imperative that if you are adding, you do one of those two things, delete something or frame it as such that they know that an old process is gone and the new one is taking its place. Because if you don't do one of those two things, you will be inundated. They will be inundated. You'll be inundated with whining. They'll be inundated with more work, and it will not be good for morale. Ty, you've been smiling a little bit. Do you have some thoughts?
I'm still laughing about the pencil sharpener, man.
Oh,
To put it in context, all I saw was a half circle where the pencil went in and so some tan rectangle. And I was like, what is that? Because it was halfway off the page. And that's what prompted me to comment on it. But once we got it figured out, we're like, hey, that'd be a good idea to talk about. And what you just said kind of rolls into a couple of weeks ago, we did great leaders know how to plan through inspiring or inspire while planning. And it boils down to prioritization as well. When you're deciding what to add, what to drop, it's all about prioritization at that point. For the most part, Dan, I took it a different way, a different lens. I'm going to come across it because as leaders, what you said, everything is true. If you're going to add something, you can't overburden your staff or your people or your team with just not taking away something. Or if you're adding something, make sure it condenses 2 or 3 other things, so it's a more streamlined, efficient way. And we can drop the projects that don't matter or that will be inherently resolved in the new add-on that we're doing. For me, I was thinking from a leadership, because we're all leaders, no matter if you're middle management, upper management, the CEO, 2 things. First of all, if you're middle management and you're in an organization and you're good at your job, I mean, hopefully people know whether they're good at their job or not. And there's something consistently going wrong organizational wise that you just philosophically disagree with. You have to make a decision if you fight it or not. You have to choose your battle. And sometimes, in my case, I'll bring it up in a second, sometimes it's easier just to let it go. And I'll give you, for instance, a while back, I was working, actually, I was in charge of the math department when I was teaching. And I had a principal who came in so abruptly and was a bad principal, was moved to the school because it was their first principalship. They should have probably never gotten the licensure for a principalship. And she's basically destroying the school and wanting things to move on. Needless to say, I was in charge of the math department, I was up in some of the higher level committees. And she's, well, you got to do this, you got to do this. And I have no problem working. But the way it was going about and the pressure she was putting on everybody because she's trying to make a mark for her name, it was destroying the school. And at one point, I was like, well, look, we got to get rid of this. We got to do this. And I kept on getting feet stonewalled on things that were in progress before she got here. And at one point, it started affecting me personally. Okay, I still love my job. I still did it well. But my health was going. I went to the doctor. I had high blood pressure. I'd never had high blood pressure in my life. And I go to the doctor, and the doctor says, well, you have high blood pressure. You need to change your diet, blah, blah, blah. I go, well, I exercise it. I'm thinking, what am I going to change? And over the course of the summer, I knew I was good at what I did. I knew, because I wouldn't be where I was and what I've been doing. So I resigned from the district. And after I resigned, 2 days later, 48 hours later, she calls me up and she goes, what's going on? I go, I've resigned. And I explained to her, I go, I'm done. 3 weeks later, I get a call from 2 other principals. They're recruiting me to come and work for them, because in our district, you weren't allowed to recruit people from different schools as a principal. You had to leave the teachers where they were at the school. You weren't allowed to kind of entice them to come over. So I'd never lost anything. And when I got to my new school, they put me in a higher level position with more autonomy and more dissemination of the projects I was working on and support. I had to make that decision. I was ready to give up teaching because it was a battle I couldn't win. I had talked to the superintendent. They said, no, she's there. You got to do that. There was no compromise, no nothing. So I made that decision based on my personal state, based on what I valued and on what's best for the students. And I figured if I made that point, maybe some change will happen, because I wonder, why is this guy leaving? And I left. I didn't know 2 other people left after me. The principal was no longer a principal the next year, and the school turned around. So by adding or dropping, which I just dropped it, I was like, I can't fight a losing battle. If I sit there and fight a losing battle, it's not going to be good for the students. It's not going to be for me. It's not going to be good for anybody around. even though I knew I was right. And all the evidence showed that I was right. But for me to leave, people took notice. And if you're a leader and you leave something, people question it. Why did they leave? And so that's the lens I took this one from, was whether to add or drop. And sometimes there's a battle that you have to choose to fight because you really believe. And sometimes there's a battle that even though you want to fight it, you have to leave it. And so,
Absolutely. The people side of things, whether you're the leader implementing, or Ty didn't have the positional power and authority to not adhere to the rules. So he looked within and he realized his personal state and engaged values, and he made an active decision to go elsewhere because he was not in alignment, which helped him physically and mentally, and it worked out. So there's an example of how an employee could be inundated. In this case, Ty was the employee, if the leader does not add appropriately or delete appropriately. So I want to take a step back in regard to a generic approach to this, because there are myriad examples that we could go into it for every profession, every sector of the economy, every organization, business, etc., that where we could come up with examples. So I want to just give you some generic ideas to consider. When you implement, this might be hindsight is 2020, but when you implement, you've got to have metrics in place to evaluate what you've implemented. So let's assume last fiscal year you implemented something and had appropriate measurements in place and metrics, and you were looking at the data that said what we did didn't work, so we're going to add something else and delete this. So rely on your data before you just off the cuff change or add something. Rely on your data. If that's not something you've typically done, because in a lot of organizations you've got your multiple plates spinning, right, all at the same time, and you're adding all these different things, well, that it might be hard to delete some things if you've not got the metrics. So as moving forward this year, make sure that you've got metrics in place if you're going to implement. Another thing to look at times, look at the title. Great leaders know what to drop or add. Let's look at that through the lens of human resources. There may be people in your circle of influence, your organization, whatever, that aren't valuable to the organization. And if that's what you need to drop, if those people are the things that are holding you back, it's not fun to help somebody. I've heard the term manage people out of the position, but if you have to manage them out of the position, whether it's a formal performance improvement plan or simply a discussion, don't be afraid to do that. And if it's someone you really like, respect, whatever, one of the things I've always thought in my mind when I've had discussions with people, whether it's good or bad, I've thought about, this is what's right for the organization. It's not great for the person I'm talking to. I want to take care of this person during this, help them land on their feet, but I've got to focus on the good of the organization, the good of the cause. And that's in a disciplinary thing or a performance thing, whatever. You've got to focus on the good of the organization. And if you've got what we all term as dead weight, human beings that aren't working to capacity or doing the things you want them to do, those might be the people you drop. Then think about adding. You've got to find people who fit you. So you go to market and say, here are the things we value, not we have a COO position, please apply. Yeah, what does that mean? How do I know if I fit that COO position or not? Well, here's the things that the person going to be responsible for, plus these are the things we value, and this is how we're going to compensate you. And if you fit all that, please apply. So if you've gotten rid of your dead weight as your COO because he or she's not measuring up or not fitting, you go to market and find somebody who does. So that's the human spin of things. You've got to know metrics based, what to add in regard to tasks or operational procedures, SOPs, or people. Who is not pulling their weight, if anybody, and if so, jettison them and find people who fit are going to help and who are going to help you go to the next level as an organization.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, because I like the generic scenario you brought up, because you have big organizations, you have small organizations. Some may not have an HR department, some do. Some may be such a big organization that to get anything done takes 15 signatures to do it. And so you have to really prove your case as a leader and prove your case through metrics. Look, this is what we're doing. When I was in the tech industry after education, we had a scenario where we were doing live streaming. This is before COVID. We were doing live streaming, high-end live streaming, and we had clients. And this add and drop also applies to customers and clients, because sometimes you get a client that is overtaxing everyone, even though they're paying what they're paying for a service, but they're unreasonable. And it's getting to the point where it's the man hours that we're getting billed for or that they're paying for are exceeding what they're paying for. And, you know, we sit there in a leadership position, go, well, what do? We can't lose a customer. They're paying for it, you know. Well, yeah, you can, because you have to evaluate, is it worth keeping this customer? And this is where metrics come into play. We could get 2 smaller customers, and it was a big client too. I'll say it was a big client, all right? But we could get 2 smaller clients that would be less the work that we're doing for the larger client and pay 50% more altogether than the larger client was paying for. So what do? We drop the client. Sorry, we have to drop you. Find another home, and we're done. And you know, you hate to lose a client because you don't know how much pull that client has out there with other clients. But if you do your job right and you're leading your people right, all your other clients are being taken care of over 110%. They're happy with you. It doesn't matter what somebody says. You're doing a good job. We didn't have any fear of having a negative connotation out there. So it not only extends to the people, the person, the leader, their people, or the departments, but it also extends to clients and customers. You have to draw the line somewhere. Where do I add? What do I drop? We drop 1, gain 2 smaller, make 50% more in profits.
In less time.
In less time. Yes, that's the big key, in less time.
Yeah. So that's a good point, Ty. And, you know, through a coaching lens, I coach other leaders, and I always stress on the onset, you know, this has got to work. If, you know, Ty, you want me to be your coach, it's got to be a good fit for both of us. So if you're in a situation where you've got clients, I think if you're open-minded enough to realize that we don't want to work with the ones that are dragging the lifeblood sucking the lifeblood out of our company, be upfront with them on the front end. You know, this great, you want to hire us, you're going to be our client. Just so you know, it's got to be mutually beneficial, and it's got to work for both of us, short-term and long-term. So getting back to your suggestion that all of a sudden your other clients see this huge client disappear, you've set them up from the onset to understand that their relationship with you has to be mutually beneficial and appropriate and positive. And if it isn't, we're going to have to talk about parting ways. So you've set them up to have that thought versus them assuming that or filling in an understanding that is not beneficial to your company. So I looking through the lens as a coach, you just do that with prospective clients. Hey, this is going to work as long as we're both into it. And if it no longer works, either one of us can bring it up, and we'll go from there. So yeah, being an open book, and accountability, and being beyond reproach, and taking care of other people, in this case, your client. But you look through the lens of what's it doing to our company. This client is the thing we need to drop. Well, that was taking care of both. Hopefully that client, A, learned a lesson, B, found somebody who better met their needs.
Yeah, you have to do what you got to do, and you're never going to get away from not adding or dropping, whether it's components or customers or employees. You're always going to have to make that decision, and it may be a tough decision. And we talked about that before. When it comes to making that tough decision, you got to make it based on all the available information and do what gives you the highest probability of success, even though it may not be the popular one.
Right. I do want to bring up one thing. You before your example earlier, you said people who are good at the job typically know it. Well, I agree. It's rarely talked about, but they're the people who always want more. Like, hey, how can I improve? What can I improve? Give me more. I need professional development. Those are typically your good people. What's funny about that situation is the people who aren't good at their job are typically not aware of it, but ask anybody else in the organization, they're fully aware of it. So people who are good rise to the top. Everybody sees that. People who aren't good, the people who aren't good don't see that in themselves, but everybody else can tell you. Like, all right, I'm not going to do evaluations this year. I'm just going to get a survey of employees and say who are the bad employees and who are the good employees, and everybody's going to know who the bad employees are. You won't,
Right.
I'm not suggesting you do that, but that theoretically you could, because everybody is aware of it. So if everybody's aware of it, getting back to other things we've talked about, you've got to be the buffalo, go address the situation, take care of that person, help them land on their feet, and jettison them if they're holding you back. And everybody knows who's holding you back.
Yeah, to put that in context with when you said, I go, boy, that really sounded arrogant when I said it, and it wasn't meant that way. I was like, I knew I was doing a good job before a new supervisor came into play, because everybody, you get the feedback, you get reviews, you get your
Right.
positions and everything like that. So that's what I meant by because I'll tell you right now, there are some horrible leaders that think they're the greatest leader in the world, and they just don't know too. Because because of their position, people aren't going to say anything, because the people that think they're a great leader are 100% positional leaders, and if you question them, they can fire you. So are you really going to open up to that? Probably not. But anyway, in general, prior to someone else coming in above you, where you stand in the organization.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I hope you learned a little bit about what to do if you are a leader and you're looking at adding something. Also consider the opposite side of that coin, deleting something. If it's not possible to delete, make sure you frame it in such a way that people understand that you're adding something that changes how you're doing something, as opposed to doing it both ways. Because I've seen that occur too. I had an employee, I said, we're going to do it this way from now on. All right, I'll do it this way. But how do I do this? I'm like, dude, we're doing it this way. You don't have to do that anymore. It's this instead of that. And he just couldn't get his mind wrapped around things, but whatever. All right. So I'm Dan Kopp, CEO and founder of Leading Like a Buffalo. This is Ty Firsching with me. He's the CEO and founder of Trade Secrets. It's an offshoot of Trade Leadership. You can find us on LinkedIn Live every Tuesday, typically. And you can always check us out on our YouTube channel, The Enhanced Leadership Project. So it's just two guys talking about leadership. We hope we can help you. If you'd like to work with us, feel free to reach out. Emails at the bottom of the screen, and join us as we work towards mastery in the Enhanced Leadership Project. And until next time, we're talking leadership. You can do it. Good luck.
Good afternoon, everyone.